the story should be a celebration almost, but now that the transfer window is open, now that coaches are being fired and plucked, then the latest one that has steamrolled the headlines has been Kevin Willard, the head coach at Maryland. Maryland, who, mind you, escaped against Colorado State on a game winner, the sole game winner of that first round, of the first round and the second round in the NCAA tournament over the weekend, and was hugging his players in the lineup in the post-game interview and the whole thing. The same guy who, at the same time, Big Ten tournament went to the media and was talking about how cheap Maryland is, saying that, hey, well, Maryland told us we couldn't stay an extra night in New York City earlier in the season because it was too expensive.
Wow.
A last-ditch effort to the media to get more money into the program at Maryland, which is, of course, favoring the football in the Big Ten. But now, all of a sudden, the next thing that's come out is he was floated as the next head coach at Villanova, which is a big-time job, a top 10-ish job in college basketball. And Villanova is the lone team, really, who has not hired a head coach. Everybody's sort of waiting, and then all the arrows start pointing to Kevin Willard having already accepted this deal. It's been floated, rumors, nobody really knows. But the problem I have is Kevin Willard has played both sides this entire way. It was 10 days ago that it was announced that him and Maryland were working towards an extension, per John Rothstein. And then it was 3 days after that he had that tirade to the media about Maryland not paying any money. And then 2 days after that, they win their first game, and then we're talking about, I'm here until, he went on the Fan in Washington, D.C., and he's like, I'm here as long as the AD is here. We're going to still have these conversations. Now the AD of Maryland took the AD job at SMU. So the AD is now the AD at SMU, so less people to talk to. And then he goes back and forth. He goes, well, I have nobody to talk to about an extension. This is all available to the media and what Kevin Willard has said. And then he went back and forth a couple days ago after they win a round of 32 in a game winner. He went to the media and they asked him, have you had conversations with Villanova? And he said essentially yes. And then they asked him about it a day and a half later. And then he, instead of, I guess, addressing the situation because there's so much drama surrounding it, just decides to talk about blatantly how great Derek Queen and their starting five is.
He's dancing around it.
You're dancing around it, but you're addressing it, but you're not, but you are, but you're not. And then all of a sudden, this whirlwind has number one, makes him look bad. Now the Maryland faithful hate him because they know that he's half out the door before you even play the biggest game that they have played since basically 2003. And now they're sitting there going against the number one seed in Florida. And all of the eyes are on whether Kevin Willard is going to announce his new contract before the end of the night.
Is this game over before it even starts? Because of everything.
I said that about Will Wade. I'm not going to say that again.
Yeah.
I said that about Will Wade. I'm not. That mojo
and I think
doesn't
Maryland.
ride with me,
And I think Maryland. And I understand it was the first round, second round game for McNeese that they ultimately were playing. But Maryland's a lot more talented than that McNeese team. And I think the locker room. I mean, it didn't look like a locker room that was mailing it in at the end of that Colorado State game. And you could argue that what were they doing in the first place that close in a game with Colorado State? But I think we all learned CSU was a really good team. But nonetheless, I think this is a talented roster, and I think it might be a close game. I probably wouldn't bet against Florida and the spread. I think the spread's like 6.5 on that one, according to our good friends at Hard Rock Bet. I probably wouldn't be a betting man against Florida in that matchup. But
I wouldn't either.
It's very odd, Colin, that he's dancing around all this stuff. Now
we gave Will Wade grief for being open about it and saying, yeah, I'm taking this job. The problem I have with Kevin Willard is he's playing completely both sides. And if you're so Mr. Media and trying to get money to the university, money to the athletic program, money to the basketball team 10 days ago, and now all of a sudden we're Mr. Wishy-Washy on every answer surrounding Villanova, you can't pick and choose your moments.
Yep.
And I don't really see, for a guy who's coached for 18 years and has been to one second weekend, coaching the biggest game of his life, essentially, against Maryland tonight. Is the juice really worth the squeeze here? And there's only one reason that he's going to Villanova. There is only one reason that Villanova has not hired a head coach, and it's because they're getting the guy from Maryland. And
I was going to say, too, Colin, that's the reason here. This whole dancing around and the AD leaving. I mean, read the tea leaves. Read the writing on the wall. This guy's gone. And I think if you're Maryland, Colin, like, You got to change things up. You got to pony up some NIL. You got to let the kids spend an extra night in New York City. I mean, that story you said is crazy.
Well, here's the problem. We talked to Scott Van Pelt, who is a Maryland faithful, on Tuesday at the TGL. And Scott Van Pelt, we asked him this specifically, and he said, well, Maryland's going to meet every demand he has. And demand by that, he means the NIL problems or the money allocation that Maryland had to deal with. He said Maryland's going to meet every demand he has, A, B, C, D, all the way down to G. So it wasn't necessarily that, but the problem is, imagine if this was a done deal during the Big Ten tournament, because we knew Kyle Neptune was out during the Big East tournament. I'm willing to bet, similar to Darian DeVries, who took that Indiana job with West Virginia, I'm willing to bet that there were conversations between Willard and Villanova well before we even got to the tournament. And if that's the case, if Kevin Willard ended up having conversations, having a handshake deal in place, or even signing it before we even got to the tournament, and then he takes that time to bash the university for not giving proper amount of funding to the team, then you look bad. Then you look soft. That's where it looks bad.
Is it a bad look for a Big Ten team like Maryland, who won a national championship at the turn of 2000? I know it's been almost over 25 years.
Yeah, Villanova is Villanova.
But still, I mean the stories coming out about Maryland, like Colin, this isn't a pooper of a university. This is I don't want to say a storied school, but certainly one of the better basketball schools, I think, in the Big Ten. I think a better basketball school comparatively to a lot of teams out there, man, and to not want to pony up some NIL for a team that...
It's not NIL because they got Derek Queen in there, but I think it's its allocation of resources to the team itself.
And you mentioned to me off the show that everything's about football, and even though they're not giving basketball the same amount of money that they're giving football, they're going to continue to give football the money because it's the moneymaker. Even though they stink and they're not probably ever going to do much of anything, they're going to continue to funnel more money into that sport because it's the cash cow.
The way I look at it is, if you're Kevin Willard, you have now turned Maryland completely against you, and you're playing the biggest game Maryland has played in the better part of 15 years tonight. And you could look online, take a look at how the Maryland fans are reacting to Kevin Willard, their head coach, basically being out the door to another good program before they play in a Sweet 16 game. This is not Will Wade as a 12 seed taking the step up to a Power 4, Power 5. This is not Darian DeVries, who didn't make the tournament. This is a guy who's playing in a Sweet 16 game. He's coaching a Sweet 16. He is one of 16 teams left out of the 300-something. And he is essentially, maybe the players don't care, but how do you think the fan feels about that?
Yep.
It's a little patronizing. It's a little belittling. And now all of a sudden, you got half the fans that are sitting there thinking, screw this guy, but you're also rooting for the team.
The highest point the Maryland fans have had in 5 years, 6 years, all overshadowed by a coaching controversy. That dates back how many months, Colin? How many months have we been doing this with Kevin Willard? So
it's about a month. But the problem is, it should not have even come to that.
It's probably been longer,
The fact that it should never have even come to that. And Rothstein tweeted 11 days ago that Maryland and him were working towards an extension, and they're going to give him a big, fancy new $50 million practice facility. So there's that, too. So you can't be dropping left and right that, hey, we're thinking about this, but I'm also thinking about that. Stick to your guns. I mean, geez. Now you get the whole fan base turning against you. That's the problem. This is supposed to be the apex of the season, and we're already worrying about next year.
Let's
College football dealt with the same thing. What are we doing here? Set some dates. Make it the Tuesday to open up the transfer portal and all that stuff. The Tuesday after the tournament. Tom Izzo, one of the great coaches in college basketball's history, outspoken about it this week. He's like, I'm not even worrying about the transfer portal until next year. Until after these guys. And he's right. That should go unsaid.
Izzo's like the only coach that does that, though. Like, you look at the starting fives for each team's, Kyle, 4 out of 5 Izzo's kids have been there 3+ years. He's the only coach that does it anymore. He's the only coach that hangs on to his own and isn't necessarily willing to pluck other players. He's the unicorn. Yes. He's the unicorn in that sense, though, right now. Everybody's plucking players.
But the problem is, it's the timing. It's the timing. This should be the celebration and the great finish to a great college basketball season. These next 10 days, you're not asking for 3 weeks. You're asking for 10 days, essentially. next 10 days to celebrate the season.